Welcome to the latest episode of Trojans Wired, the podcast, which is an in-house production of the website Trojans Wire. We are part of the College Wire Network. USC women's basketball analyst CC Clay back at it, and this,
What's
we do
up?
WNBA check-in shows. This is a different off-season show. This is our Big Ten 2026 preview series, and so today, CC, we're looking at the bottom of the Big Ten. We're going to be moving up in this series. Going to take a cluster of teams, a package of teams. Going to go from the bottom to the middle tier and eventually to the top tier where USC resides. But it's our Big Ten offseason series. Just give you a taste of what's out there in the Big Ten, what to expect in the conference this coming season. We're in the offseason, so we just have a chance to slowly patiently work our way through. And so, Cece, you've done the research. Give us your overview of like what you see as like being the likely bottom tier of the Big Ten this upcoming season.
First of all, I have to say, um, this was really hard for me. Just to get the bottom was really hard for me because I don't know the Big Ten like that. Now if it was the Pac-12, I could s- run it off. But because it's the Big Ten and it's our second year in the league, hey, I I might have got this all wrong, but this is just what I'm seeing on paper. I'm sure it's going to look totally different when the season starts, when we see how some of these teams gel and the differences in coaching and what they did to upgrade their teams. But hey, you can't see all my notes, but I took a ton of notes on this. And starting at 18, let's get right into it. Starting at 18, I have the Purdue Boilermakers. And here's why I have the Purdue Boilermakers. They finished 12 and 19 overall last year, 5 and 13 in the Big Ten play. They finished 13th, and they lost in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. Katie Gerald, she's a former Purdue player, Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame inductee. She has an overall record at Purdue of 37 and 52. And their offensive philosophy is up tempo with an inside out concept. She favors floor spacing a lot, and their defensive philosophy is primarily man to man with help principles. They emphasize on limiting paint touches. So, going back to last year, their offense was ranked 11th in the big, their defense was 10th in the big, their 3-point attempts, they were sixth in the big, and their 3-point overall percentage was 34.1, which was fourth in the big last year. But the reason why I put them 18 was because they had seven people transfer out. Seven total, and they had some significant losses that were on that list that walked off that team. So their overall loss included 35 points per game. What they needed to do was upgrade their 3-point shooting a little bit. So when they went to the transfer portal, I think they did that. They got Tara Day, who averages 50% from 2-point land, but she averages a good percentage in 3-point shooting percentage. And then they got Taylor Feldman. She averaged 36% from three. And they got like six people in. So they did good. And then they have a freshman coming in with Amaya Reynolds. She's a 5-star point guard, all Indiana basketball, McDonald's All American, instant impact. And I think their immediate impact players are going to be Tara Day because she's an experienced point guard and Taylor Feldman. Their strengths this year are going to be sharp shooting additions because they did increase their 3-point percentages. But their weaknesses are going to be their post depth. They don't have a strong post. I think the season outlook for them is they're going to add offensive firepower, but they're going to have to gel together. So they're going to face chemistry problems, continuity, and I just ranked them 18th because of their post play and because of the way they played in the past. Excuse me. So that's my overview of Purdue.
Does Katie Gerald's use a lot of zone? One would think that she's going to have to play a lot of it to mitigate the limitations that she has with her defensive front court, right?
Yeah, I when I was researching their defense, the only thing that I saw on their defense was that they allowed 68.7 points per game. Um, their defensive philosophy was primarily man to man. So that's what I researched. I mean, I could be wrong. So, but they might have to go to a zone.
Yeah, and remember last season USC put a 31-2 run on Purdue, the game in West Lafayette, just an absolute second quarter blowout. Now, Purdue played really well in the first quarter, but USC with just a massive tidal wave in the second quarter. Any other notes on Purdue?
No, I'm looking to see the freshmen. They could have an instant impact. They could start, but I'm looking to see how they intermix all these transfers in compared to what they were doing last year. So I just think team chemistry is going to be really, really important under Gerald's system. So I have them at 18. Y'all can come at me if you want. But I would say any team between 18 and 15, or even 18 and 14, can fluctuate. But I don't know. Looking at the other teams, I don't see it.
Yeah, and keep in mind, everybody, this is June. Like in October, we'll get preseason practice, and we'll be able to get some notes on each of these teams. And then, of course, need to see these teams play games for a couple weeks in November. So, this is the quote unquote way too early rankings, but we're just giving you a taste, giving you a sense of where teams stand. And like, CC, I don't think anyone would dispute the idea that Purdue is a bottom tier Big Ten team. It's just, whether it's 18, whether it's 15, whether it's 13, that's still the bottom third of the league for certain. Like no one's going to have them in the top 10. So, I don't think there are going to be too many haters coming your way on this one.
Hey, I'm all up for discussion because, like I said, I don't know the Big Ten like I would know the Big 12. So any of you guys from the Big Ten that are listening, if there are, or if this gets pushed out to any Big Ten followers or whatever, please chime in because I'm still learning the Big Ten, so you guys might see it differently, and who knows, you know. But yeah, Purdue is on my bottom.
All right, 17.
So I'm sure a lot of you thought that I was going to rank Wisconsin as number 18 because they're going through so much change with the new coaching system and who they lost. I mean, but I would say that Robin Pingleton, when she came from Missouri, she has a formidable record at Missouri. Um, she's coached Sophie Cunningham in the NBA. They ran a 4 out offense at Missouri, so that should fit well in the big. Um, she had 9 NCAA tournament appearances when she was at Missouri, so I think that was a really good hire for Wisconsin. Their offense last year, they were ranked 12th in the big offensively. They were allowed. I'm sorry, they were defensively ranked number 11th, and they allowed 17.8 threes per game. So their 3-point percentage was 31.2, and they were ranked ninth in the Big Ten in their 3-point shooting. So what 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 Robin did when she came in was she got some transfers to help increase their 3-point shooting, and she did just that. So she brought in Shea Bolin from Illinois. She's a sophomore. She averaged 34% from three. She brought in Kyra Daniels from Missouri State. She averaged 35% from three. And then she brought in Brianna Ware from Stony Brook, and she averages 35% from three. So she increased her 3-point shooting. The offense that she likes to run, like I said, is a 4 out. They play man to man, but her teams, from what I remember, are her Missouri teams. They were really gritty, really tough. If you watch Sophie Cunningham play, how she is defensively and she doesn't back down, that's how the Wisconsin team is going to be. So I'm looking forward to seeing them play. They got in Jalissa Morris, who's a freshman Gatorade Player of the Year from Illinois, and Aaliyah Washington, who was all state from Wisconsin. So they brought in some key players and they have some good freshmen. I think the one player that's going to do very well for them is the post that they brought in. Her name is Gift Uchenna, and she is from where's she from? She's from Southern Illinois. She 99% percentile on the offensive boards and 100 percentile on the defensive boards. She's just a beast on the boards, and she averaged 14.5 points per game. So, to bring her in to fulfill what Sarah Williams was doing, on one hand, I think they got a better rebounder. Um, but two, it's going to be how she translates over to Power Five play compared to, where she was playing before. So that's going to be a key. The weaknesses are, they had major turnover in their roster, and they have a new coaching system. So, this is going to be a rebuilding year for Robin, but I did put her at 17 just because of her what she's done at Missouri, and I think she's going to bring an immediate culture change at Wisconsin, and I don't think she's going to be the 18th team in this league. She might even be better. She might even jump up to 15. Who knows if she can get this team to jail? But that's where I am with Wisconsin.
Is the problem going to be more how do they score or how do they defend?
I think, their Missouri's a defense. They were a defensive team when she was with Missouri, so I think she's going to expect that out because they weren't very good defensively in the big, and I think you're going to see a change there on the defensive side of the ball. But like I said, she upgraded offensively too with her outside perimeter shooting and bringing in better 3-point players. It's just the culture shift that's going to be a change. But since she brought in so many transfers, the culture is going to be the culture. It's going to be a culture that nobody's seen before anyway. So, but I think it's going to improve on both sides of the ball, to be honest with you.
Any other notes on Wisconsin?
Nope. Nope.
Okay, 16.
Okay, you guys might be a little surprised here, but I'm giving it to Rutgers. I'm ranking Rutgers at number
Hmm.
16. And the reason why is I think that what happened with Keomi Miller last year um, really challenged the culture of that program and the continuity of that team with the up and down play of her. And now that she's gone and she brought in some key transfers, I think you're going to see this team. They're still going to be in the bottom echelon of the big, but I think anywhere from 16 to 14 is where you can look at Rutgers being. But I have them at 16. I like Coquise as a coach. I used to really really cheer hard for her when she was coaching at Penn State. So I really like her as a coach, and I really really hope that she can develop Rutgers into a really good, formidable basketball school for women. They they too had to improve on their 3-point shooting. Their offense was like almost they were ranked 14th offensively last year, averaging 60.2 points per game. Um, Defense, they were ranked 13th. They allowed 71.4 points per game. Their 3-point shooting was 25.9, so they were the worst in the Big Ten in their 3-point shooting. And I think that Coquise understood that where she needed to upgrade was her perimeter shooting. Her perimeter shooting, and she did just that. She brought in Faith Blackstone from Stephen F. Austin, who was all Southland first team. She shoots 35% from three, and she shot 51% from 2-point land. And then they brought in Kayla Ivey, who's a ball handler from Boston College. She's an elite passer, and she shot 35% from three. And they brought in Lauren Swan from Arizona, who averaged 8 points a game. She was all Big 12 freshman team, and she shot 39% from three. So she did her due diligence in the portal and brought in 3-point shooting. So I think you're going to see their offense score a little bit better next season than they did last season.
So obviously, USC fans, if you remember, Keomi McMiller did not play against the Trojans, a game in early January in Piscataway in New Jersey. So that was a big story. Like that Rutgers internal friction revolving around Keomi McMiller, the star player, who didn't get to go against Juju on the court. It was a real, disappointment just in terms of an entertainment perspective. We wanted to see Juju and Keomi go at it on the court. We didn't get that chance, but in the transfer portal era, like it's not as though this tension didn't exist before the transfer portal era and the NIL era, but obviously it exists on a higher plane, right? That if a coach is going to show, try to show tough love and discipline to a star, the obvious risk, shoot, just that player is going to go right out the door as soon as possible in the portal. Any reflections with, the benefit of several months since that happened in early January? Does the way that situation was handled, does it look or feel different to you now compared to what happened in early January at Rutgers?
No, I really can't comment on that because nobody really knows what the situation was at Rutgers between the players, the coaches, and that whole dynamic. I will say that, when you have situations like that where you don't know if a player is going to play or if they're not going to play, it creates a locker room issue and it creates continuity within the team. So I think now that that situation is dealt with and gone, and I wish Kiyomi a lot of luck at Penn State. I just think now Coquise can focus on team and team value and team continuity. This is a fresh start, and we're going to see Rutgers, I think, play a lot better than they did last year. Will they be in the top 10? No, but I have them ranked at 16. I mean, I like their offense. They do a lot of pick and roll action. They do a lot of high ball screen action. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the 3-point shooters that she brought in and how that's going to elevate her team dynamics and her team scoring.
One more follow up with Rutgers. When I saw Rutgers play USC, I mean, we all did, but one thing that really stood out, Rutgers was badly undersized. Now, of course, USC had a lot of length that bothered a lot of teams, but the disparity really seemed to show up against Rutgers in a game which was never, ever remotely close. Do you think Rutgers has a little bit more size, a little bit more length, or is that going to be one of the central lingering deficiencies with this roster?
They brought in three people with size. So they brought in Imani Lester from Kansas State. She's a 6'4" center, and her basic role is going to be to protect the rim. And then they brought in Nene Nadai. I don't know how to say her last name.
The young
Nadii.
guy?
Yeah, from Boston College, who's a forward, and then they brought in Yassine Ndiaye, um, and she's a center, a shot blocker. So they brought in some size. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play. Both those two, Nini and Yassine, came off the bench. They didn't see a lot of playing time. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fill the backup roles or what Coquise Washington does with her. But Imani Lester should be a good pickup for them from Kansas State.
So she's going to play starter level minutes, right?
You would think, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean,
Uh,
she came from Kansas State. She didn't play that much at Kansas State, but I'm sure that she's going to fill that role at Rutgers.
Yeah.
Um,
If they did bring in some size, you'd have to think one of them is going to be a primary central rotation player.
I would think, but I still think that's one of Rutgers' biggest weaknesses is they have unproven chemistry and their interior. What's going to happen with their interior? That offense is still a question mark. So we have to wait and see what Coquise if she changes her offense a little bit. Are they going to be better defensively? Like the way they play defense, she does a lot of on ball, aggressive defensive style. So with size now, how is she going to change that? You know what I mean? So it's just I'm interested to see what she does with this team because it's not like one great player and other role players, so to speak. Now she's got a plethora of 3-point shooters and she's got some size. So how different is her offense going to be and defense when she gets on the court? So interested to see what she does with that team.
Yeah, Rutgers is intriguing because, as you just laid out very clearly, there are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of transitions being made, and we'll see if they can be knitted together. All right, number 15.
And in our last discussion of our 18 through 15, I have Northwestern Wildcats. Now, season recap on them. They finished 9-22, 4-14 in Big Ten play. They finished tied for 14th. So I have them right about where they were last season. And the reason is they don't have any notable transfers coming in, and they do have uh, most of their kids returning from last year. But are they going to be able to develop to get past that top 15? I don't know. You know what I mean? So, they were 13th in the big in offense. They were 12th in the big in defense. They were fourth in the big in 3-point attempts per game. Their 3-point percentage was 28. They were 13th in the conference, and they didn't do any upgrades in the portal. So, one could say they might not be at 15. You know what I mean? So they might be lower, but I giving Joe as being a great coach and having the returners come in means that they have chemistry already built in to that program. They don't have to do a rebuild. They don't have to teach culture. They don't have to do any of the stuff that I have the bottom teams doing where they had all these different transfers coming in. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not moving them up. I'm keeping them right at 15.
Yeah, it's a very familiar topic in sports. Oh, this team has a lot of experience coming back, but if it's a lower tier team, is that experience good experience? That is the obvious question. So Northwestern clearly banking on the ability of the coaching staff to develop existing talent and rely on continuity, which, as you've illustrated, doesn't exist at Rutgers, doesn't exist at Wisconsin. Those teams are leaning into the more transitional, high transfer approach. Northwestern is very clearly zigging where other teams are zagging. They're banking on that approach being different and unique. Now, the obvious point for USC women's basketball fans about Northwestern, this is the one team we didn't get to see directly
Yeah,
against the
right.
Trojans because of the wildfires, the decision not to come out and play. Um,
They
and
chickened out.
it's interesting how that game never did get made up. And because of the disparity between the two schools, like I don't think anyone at USC lost sleep. Oh, we didn't get to play Northwestern. That said, it did kind of I think there was still a sense of wow, like you couldn't work to make this to make up this game at some
Yeah.
point. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, especially since Penn State came out. They came out they were supposed
Yep.
to come out the same weekend as Penn
2 game
State, and Penn State
homestand. That's right.
and UCLA. The wildfires were closer to UCLA than they were to USC, and UCLA just moved that game, and Penn State was like, "Yeah, we're with it." You know what I mean? We're going to come
They
out and
played that
play.
at yeah, UCLA played Penn
Yeah,
State at Long
Long
Beach, Long
Beach.
Beach's
Yeah.
arena. Yes.
So I just, Northwestern made a decision. I felt that they made that decision because they knew that they really couldn't win both those games, and they wanted to save money. Why waste money, right? Why waste money? Fly out to LA, when we could save money, put that money back into our budget, and possibly do something for these kids. I who knows, but
Yeah.
I,
Interesting point. I mean, if a couple of players on that roster got some NIL bonus money as a result of saving that revenue, now that's a really good thing. But we don't know.
yeah, we don't
We
know,
don't.
and you're right, they didn't make that game up, which I thought was interesting, but I mean, Northwestern, like I said, they finished tied for 14th, really 15th in the conference. They really there was no reason for them to come out to LA other than a long trip, to come out to LA and go see the sights. And they figured, hey, let's just use the wildfires as an excuse and we'll save some money. We'll put some money back into our budget. It's two teams that, well, hey, I don't think we have a chance to win anyway. But that mentality. I'm not gonna say they had that mentality, but I always say, hey, when you have a chance to go play against top ranked teams, why not go do it for the experience? Whether you win or lose or the outcome of the game is irrelevant, But give yourself an opportunity to go learn, or perhaps maybe that team would have been on such a high that they could have upset UCLA or USC. I'm just speaking in, you know what I mean, from a mentality of positivity here, and optimism, showing optimism for your school. Now, who knows if it was a team decision not to play or if it was a management decision not to play, coaching
Yeah.
decision, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. We don't know. Do I think the players would have wanted to come out? I do. Who doesn't want to come out to LA? If for anything, go see some of the sites. So maybe they thought, well, we can't go see anything because of the fire, so
Because of
why
the
go?
fires. Yeah. Yeah. It wouldn't have
So
been a fun trip the way a
yeah.
trip to LA normally would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think Penn State came out and they still enjoyed themselves. So that's neither here nor there. I have them ranked
Yeah.
at 15. They do have a couple freshmen coming in that could be an immediate impact, and Emily Dobson and Tara Clark, both of them in the top 150. So, the way Joe coaches, he's very team oriented. He'll have them playing together as a team, but I don't see them going past 15,
I think that the
above
point,
15.
yeah, so you made the very salient point that, you need to play the best to find out more about your players, about your roster, what your program is capable of doing as it's currently constructed. So it's interesting that Northwestern's not didn't, add much of anything in the portal and is going with a developmental approach, and yet it's coming off a season in which it made the conscious choice to not test itself against the two best teams in the Big Ten. So, like, those two philosophies do not flow together. Let's
Yeah.
not play the best, and yet let's rely on the idea that that we can develop our roster. See, there's a conflict there. So it'll be interesting to see if Northwestern can make it work. All right,
Yeah, I
so
think it's interesting too because the bottom teams that I have at, 18, 17, and 16, in my opinion, all did what they needed to do in the portal. They looked at what their team was lacking last year and they went out and they upgraded. All three teams were lacking in three-point shooting and they all went and got three-point shooting added to their roster. So, and defensive holes filled and Rutgers getting, a rim protector and so on and so forth. So they all did what they needed to do. Did that make them better? I'm going to say maybe a little bit, but not enough to move them past 15 because of how many transferred out and how many had to transfer in to get that continuity, to where the coaches needed to be. So the bottom three, 18, 17, 16, are going to be heavily trying to form continuity amongst that team because they're all new players, whereas Joe in Northwestern has returning players that already have the chemistry and the culture built in. I think that's the difference in why I rank the teams the way I rank them.
all right, so we've taken a look at each of the projected bottom four teams in the Big Ten. Now let me ask you a question about the group. Of this group, and like if one team finishes 14th instead of 16th, or 13th instead of 15th, I don't think anyone is going to say, "Whoa, CC was really off," because these are like, if they stay in like the bottom third of the league, which would be 13 through 18, like they're still like in the bottom of the league, and your assessment will remain fundamentally accurate. I think people might want to be interested in CC. Of this group of four, is there one team in this group which has a chance of, wow, like making a jump to like top 10, 9, somewhere in the distinct middle of the conference, so it's clearly not stuck in that bottom third.
You see me scratching my head, right?
Is there one team that can really transcend expectations, or are they all pretty clearly bottom tier teams in the conference?
You see me scratching my head. I mean, that is just such a tough question. It's such a tough question because it's so early. But
I think
if
that's
I
the
would
answer
say
right
anything,
there, right? That's the answer. You've
but
given
you
your
know
answer.
what? But here's what I will say.
Okay.
Here's what I'm going to say. This is just off the cuff, right? I'm going to say Robin Pingleton at Missouri was a good coach. You know what I mean? I mean, she made it to the NCAA tournament. What did I say? How many times? 9 times or whatever I said. So maybe not this year, but I'm just saying if you're going to ask me if any team has a chance to do, I'll say it like this: any team has to do better than what I predicted.
Mhm.
I would say Wisconsin.
Okay. One other general question, and not on this group, but just in the Big Ten in general. Like, you're doing the research on these teams. Like, how many other college basketball analysts in June are studying Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue, as exhaustively as you are? From the process of beginning to research these Big Ten teams, are you kind of seeing any larger patterns in terms of how Big Ten teams are trying to adjust, whether it's just in general or perhaps as a response to the dominance of the Los Angeles schools, USC and UCLA, or any other dynamics you see at work in the conference? You're beginning to just look at these teams, you're beginning to look at these programs, did like this process, which, it's not a complete process, but you're beginning to really dive into your off-season research. Any uh, bigger ideas or patterns that you're beginning to unearth?
I'm really interested to see if these teams are going to start using the philosophy um, threes and layups. You know what I mean? Because what I'm seeing in the bottom are, these teams had to upgrade their 3-point shooting, and they did. You know what I mean? So that's going to be interesting to me. And you know, are these teams trying to go out and get centers to go up against Lauren Betts? Um, USC did not really. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, we got a center, but our philosophy will be our philosophy. So I don't think that matching UCLA is the answer that everybody is seeking to do, because everybody saw that UCLA can get beat even with Lauren Betts. It's the offensive philosophies that I'm interested in seeing. If these teams are going to shift away from you know controlled sets and more to transition style like USC does. And that's what I'm going to see, transition styles, and then threes and twos. USC is not going to do that. USC is not going to go threes and twos only. They'll never do that. They'll always incorporate the mid range, which I think is an important piece of the game. But I want to see if a lot of teams are going to switch to, you know, more Princeton sets, or if they're going to go with 4 out, 1 in, 5 out, transition, pro style, because they want to develop their players more like USC does to get to the W and be ready, because they're seeing how effective Kiki is being developed in a pro style offense. So that's going to be of interest to me. But so far, all I'm seeing is that, teams that need to upgrade in 3-point shooting did just that. They went and upgraded their 3-point shooting. So obviously, perimeter shooting is an important piece to what these coaches are thinking in the future.
All right. So, when we look at the Big Ten, and of course, it's still kind of weird to think about a conference as having 18 schools. We did not have
Golly,
to
man.
deal with this
When,
in
when I
the Big
when I
12.
tell you the research involved with this, and I'm still lost, like, oh man, should this team be here? Should this be? Because I just don't
Yeah.
know them like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
don't know these teams. I don't know the coaching philosophies that well. This is my second year in, so hey guys, when I tell you that I've been researching this, like 18 through 15 took me 3 days to really figure it out. And who knows, but it's just my best guesstimation.
But you know what? That's why we love CC Clay, is because she's not just putting on a blindfold and throwing darts. She's really putting in the effort. She's putting in the paces. She's being meticulous. This is not winging it. This is actually looking at the rosters, the additions, the subtractions, the philosophies, the coaching staffs, the previous season.
Yeah,
It's a serious look. It's a serious piece of analysis. That's why we turn to CC Clay for the latest
that's
in
right.
Big Ten women's basketball analysis. So, CC, let's promote what you're doing at your Substack and also at your YouTube channel. Let's talk USC women's basketball.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to get my Substack out this week because I was actually really busy with
You were
my
researching.
yeah, I was researching, and then my regular job, and then I actually recorded 2 podcasts, which I'm going to be releasing here in the next couple weeks, and then I got Truth in the Trenches coming back next week for another episode too. So yeah, and then I'm still trying to get to the Kennedy Smith film breakdown. It's been a whirlwind for me right now. So got a lot going on.
It's the off season, but that does not mean CC Clay is taking it easy. Exactly the opposite. And at Trojans Wire, we're going to be rolling out, really slow time of year. So we're doing next several weeks here before football really takes over at USC. These next several weeks, we're going to be sharing the cuts from CC's Cynthia Cooper interview, her Beth Burns interview. We shared her Jazzy Davidson film breakdown episode this week. So, if you miss these shows on YouTube, go back there. Let's talk USC women's basketball. like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, get the notification reminder because CC Clay is putting out a lot of content in this off season. Any final words, CC, before we go?
No, we'll be right back at you though with the WNBA recap here.
Okay, sounds
Stay tuned
great.
for that. Yeah.
All right.
All
So,
right.
next time we'll look at another batch of Big Ten teams in this off-season study series. So stay tuned for more of our Big Ten
Hey, you guys,
off-season preview series.
yeah, leave in the comments. I know you can't leave comments on the audio version, or maybe you can leave comments on Apple and all those. I don't know. But
Well,
hey,
certainly on YouTube. Certainly on
yeah,
YouTube.
really, really chime in on your 18 through 15, because Matt and I are interested. I'm interested.
Yeah.
I want to see
Yeah.
what you're thinking just off the top of your head without doing the research. Um, so you can understand how hard rating the Big Ten conference is. So yeah, but I'm really interested. I want to hear your feedback, especially if you're a listener from one of the schools in the Big. Your feedback is important as well. And so yeah, respond to the pod.
All right. We'll see you next time for our Big Ten off-season preview series with CC Clay here on Trojans Wired.
Fight on.